even before the rise of the age of the pine forest. This is before that. We're still basically, some of the plants have gotten to the ground, but they're not the flowering plants. Not even the forests have come yet. And this is a very interesting period. And he says that this 30 million year period at the Permian period, where we have ice, forces the animals to, some of them, at least some of the forebears, what he calls mammal-like reptiles emerge in response to this tremendous cataclysm of ice. Now, the reptiles in the tropics, they're still as happy as clams, but it's the ones that come out of the water. Boy, it's cold. Why do I want to stay there? Let me go somewhere else to grow and live out my life. And then the ice again at the beginning of the Pleistocene. We have at approximately 1.5 to 2 million years ago.
Let me interrupt for a moment, Bing. When is the Pleistocene as compared to the Permian?
The Pleistocene is within the last several million years.
Okay.
The Permian period even predates the age of the dinosaurs. After the Permian, then we come into the Jurassic period, the Carboniferous period, and then the Cretaceous, the scientific terms for ancient times.
But I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. And at the end, as we come into the Pleistocene, he talks about the tropical animal that emerges, our forebears. And he's looking at Homo habilis, and he's probably looking at Australopithecus, the Lucy finds. Whether Lucy is our direct ancestor or not is still open to high conjecture within anthropologists. But somewhere in this period, the creature that finally decides to come down from the forests and to come out onto the savannas takes that step, a small band, makes that commitment to use its shambling feet that cannot protect it from the saber-toothed tiger, for instance. Feet that are not, that don't allow it to have the speed of the gazelle to escape prey. And so in that inauspicious beginnings, the Pleistocene begins. The first ice begins to trundle from the north to cover 1/3 of continents. And it is into this environment that shambling band of forebears begins the great adventure, at least our great adventure.
And so the Pleistocene results in the dawn of consciousness.
Yes, and the extinction of 70% of the species on Earth.
Oh, is that the other side of the coin?
Yes.
The dawn of consciousness and the extinction of 70% of life. What a price to pay for consciousness. But isn't that the way it works? You know, we were talking, we're jumping and hopscotching around here, but that's what you have to do when you talk about Eiseley. We're talking about the Neanderthal girl in the last chapter.
Wildcat Hills, yes.
He discovers, and this comes out in his autobiography as well as his biography, Fox at the Wood's Edge. And this is a great story of Eiseley. It demythologizes Eiseley, and you can pick it up. Well, we were able to get it at bargain basement prices recently through a member of the Friends of Eiseley, and I don't know whether it's still possible to do that, but that's a very significant biography of Eiseley. And here, incidentally, is his autobiography, All the Strange Hours. But we're talking about the Neanderthal girl out there in the Wildcat Hills. Well, fill us in on the Neanderthal girl. That's the last chapter in this book. And we're not considering it sequentially. We're just jumping around here. But it's called The Last Neanderthal.
Yeah, this is a period where Eiseley has gone on his first expeditions sponsored by the University of Nebraska's anthropology group out of Morrill Hall. And he's out there under rather primitive conditions in the Wildcat Hills near Scotts Bluff. And by the fire, he sees the daughter of one of the people that are from there, a rancher, and he noticed she has very, very thick shoulders. And in the firelight, he notices that she has protruding eyebrows. She doesn't look like one of us. And he realizes that somehow mixed within her genetic structure, that the accident 30,000 years later has reemerged in the guise of this young lady. And he looks at her and from different perspective than her parents or other people, saying, well, it's a little different from the ordinary type girl. Very, very thick set legs, very short, powerful stature.
Almost a gorilla-like structure.
Right. And if we go back to the Ice Ages, again, somewhere we know that in modern-day Iraq and Iran and Israel, in the Middle East, that the Neanderthals coexisted with Cro-Magnon man. And yet, after the period of this last ice age, when it receded 10,000 years ago, there were no more Neanderthals. And there's always been interesting to speculate what happened to them. Did they die out because they lost their habitat? Or was it that there were just a very limited number of spaces that they could survive in their search for caves, for instance, and that there was a cleverer cousin that coexisted with them, and that we forced them out of the cave because of our cleverness, because for whatever reason. And yet, in some way, there's thought that we could commingle with them, and part of their genetic structure occasionally comes out in accidents. And he talks about this young girl as being a throwback to the past.
There she is. She brings the mail to them. She's the rancher's daughter. And in the biography, the writer, Gail Christensen, emphasizes that Eiseley disclosed that he felt an almost erotic attraction to this Neanderthal girl. And this suggests another thought to me. In one passage, Eiseley talks about once when he wept, and he said, "That was the only time I wept, except one other time when I wept over a woman." Now you could take that literally and say, well, he wept over one of the women, one of his old girlfriends at the University of Nebraska, over one of his failed romances. There were 2 or 3 failed romances in his life. You could take it literally and say, well, that's what he meant, obviously. On the other hand, maybe he was speaking metaphorically. Maybe he was weeping over that lost part of ourselves. Weeping because the strong survive. Weeping because Cro-Magnon man forced Neanderthal man into extinction. Only once, one other time did I weep, and that was over a woman. And you think now about the dynamics of life. Isn't that the way it works? I mean, even reach back into the so-called Judeo-Christian tradition. Where did our spiritual ancestors come from? Where did the Jewish community come from? Well, they came from the slave pens of Egypt, friends. And how did they get to the slave pens of Egypt? Well, that's an easy answer. Jacob's sons went down there in the time of famine, and they got food, and so they stayed there. But wait a minute, are those the same people as the ones who come out of slavery? Aha. There's a wild tribe called the Habiru who are herded in with these more passive sons of Jacob. And these Habiru dominate. They provide the energy. that makes it possible for the children of Israel to be propelled out of their slavery. Once again, it's the Hebrew or the Habiru who dominate, and their energy furnishes the spontaneous combustion that delivers the people, motivates the people out of their slavery. So once again you have it, the same old story. Cro-Magnon man has more energy than Neanderthal man. And maybe there's something cosmic about Eiseley's statement, I wept also over a woman. But then maybe I'm embroidering it a little too much.
No, I find
can
that's a very fascinating observation on your part. I think I learned
all
a great deal from you.
All these things suggest other paths. Now, you talk about the Ice Age. See, here we've got 250 million years ago. This doesn't bother me a bit as a theist. The idea that the ultimate energy, which some people use theological language and call God, the ultimate energy expresses itself in this process that motivates this primitive form of life up out of the water first, and then into a more salubrious, a more favorable climate where it's possible to change and grow and become something that it hasn't been, to experience a quantum leap in growth and change. Now, isn't that the way life works today? Here now, and Arnold Toynbee writes about why, this might get me into an argument, might get Arnold Toynbee into an argument, why North Carolina is a more productive state than either South Carolina or Virginia. Well, he said, because South Carolina, the soil was rocky, or the soil was productive, and Virginia, the soil was productive. And so the people who couldn't make it in either Virginia or South Carolina went to the rocky soil of North Carolina, and they made North Carolina a more productive place than either one. Or take his other example of the Boeotian swine, see? Boeotia had 9 feet of topsoil. And what did Boeotia produce? Swine, as compared to Athens and Sparta, where we had only rocky soil. And what did Athens produce? The Parthenon. So, follow it.
And we're from Nebraska.
And we're from Nebraska. Do we have 9 feet of topsoil? Well,
we're losing it fast.
Yes. So what starts in prehistory continues in history. What starts in the subconscious, in the antipodean realm, emerges into the realm of conscious. Always in Eiseley. See, this is a safe rule to remember. You better interrupt me pretty soon because I'm a preacher, see, and I don't tend to stop.
I love it. Don't.
Always in Eiseley, you see this contrast between nature and culture. And we're in nature, and we had better be in nature as we look to the future, as we observe the progressive deterioration of our planet. We had better look toward Eiseley's his preferred environment, which is nature, which is the subconscious, which is origins, instead of culture, which means that which is derivative.
Yeah, he issues that warning very interestingly in this chapter, again, on the angry winter and the ice ages. And if I can read this one section.
Go ahead.
He says,
I'll keep quiet for a while.
Just very briefly, I hope. Man is the product of a very unusual epoch in Earth's history, a time when the claws of a vast dragon, the glacial ice, groped, fumbling towards him across a third of the world's land surface, and blew upon him the breath of an enormous winter. For over 1 million years, man, originally a tropical orphan, has wandered through age-long snowdrifts or been deluged by equally giant rains. He has been present at the birth of mountains. He has witnessed the disappearance of whole orders of life and survived the cyclonic dust clouds that blew in the glacial winds off the receding ice fronts. In the end, it is no wonder that he himself has retained a modicum of that violence.